Hi everyone, so I'm back with part 2 of Wildflower Folk by Christine Karen using the Crayola Supertips as watercolour. So I'll try and speed things up a little bit because you know, these things tend to drag out a little bit and I don't know just how much people are actually watching. I haven't looked at any of the analytics to see how far people are watching or, you know, what you're enjoying. So I'll try and speed things up a little bit, but I know that some of you like to see the whole process from beginning to end. Hamish. Sorry, Hamish is just wandering into one of the bedrooms that we prefer him not to go into often, so just letting him know that I can actually see him. So I'm using some greys now. I've chosen a couple of different types of grey here to do the rock. And I'll get that sort of blocked in pretty quickly and roughly. And I've also used a ruler and a quite hard 4H pencil so that it's not too dark, but I've come in about 1 centimetre around the inside edge of the page, just to do a little bit of a border. So I don't really want to go right to the edge, but I didn't necessarily want it to be too sketchy either. So I've actually done a coloured pencil, lead pencil line, graphite line, and that will give me an idea of where to go to, and I can erase it later. I sort of, you know, sometimes I don't do that and my edges end up a bit sort of, you know, going at an angle or a bit of a mess because I haven't thought it through and been prepared. So today I actually have, which makes a nice change. So I'm, excuse me, this frog just does not want to go away. So I'm pulling in a bit of that sort of bluey green as well into the greys, just to get that base for the rock in. And I think I need to clean a little bit of these colours off now. I've just squeezed some water out of my brush, and that's how quick and easy a clean up you have in between, you know, using your colours. So that's really convenient, and I think I might even be able to manage that sitting on the sofa. So I'd like to start putting in the hair and the background, I think. So for her hair, I'd like to do browns, and I'd like to do maybe not really warm browns, although having said that, what comes out first is quite warm. Yeah, that looks like it's meant to be brown, but it actually looks quite green on the plate there. So between those three colours we should get a good start, I think. So I'm going to start with that lighter one and bring in a little bit of warmth. So I'm sorry if you can hear Hamish trotting up and down. He's getting very close to the time we normally go for an afternoon walk, and so he's very quickly started to get used to our routine, which is a bit of a worry because I don't want a regimented routine, but also I know with a fearful dog that it's very helpful for them to know what they can expect out of each day. But I also don't want to be ruled by a dog. So, as I say, he's starting to get a little bit like he's wandering around. And when he goes really quiet, Hamish, I start to get worried, because that's when things like socks are stolen and he starts to chew on things that he shouldn't be chewing on. This dog has got jaws of steel, and it is amazing what he can chew through. So far it's been all his toys, which is okay. That's what they're bought for. But he's destroying some so-called indestructible or hard to destroy toys. So it worries me that if he starts to chew on other things that he shouldn't be, he's going to do some serious damage with those teeth of his. So at age 2, he still seems to be exhibiting a bit of puppy-like naughtiness. I'm guessing that in his prior life maybe he wasn't allowed to behave like a puppy, and so he's starting to do that now. He's just come for a little scratch. Good boy. And you know, so it's very much, we're learning to correct the behaviour without scaring him and you know, upsetting the apple cart too much, because we don't want him to go backwards, but he also needs to learn what the boundaries are. So for some reason today he's showing a deep fascination for going into my son's room, which he doesn't normally do, and he doesn't really have a lot to do with my son. My son, he has a busy life. He works 2 jobs. You know, he has a daughter, and he does a lot of things with her on his non-custodial days. So just bear with me a moment. Come on, come. So he's just showing a little bit too much interest, and of course I'm not able to pay that much attention to him, so I've just gone and shut the door. So yes, it's interesting that he wants to be in there, in a room that's so obviously dominated by, you know, my son, given that he doesn't want to have anything to do with him normally. Unless, of course, my granddaughter is around, and he loves her. So if she is sitting on her dad's knee, Hamish has no problem going up to him. Just like he has no problem going up to people who have dogs. When we're out walking, if we pass someone with a dog, he will actually go straight up to them and let them pet him pretty much most of the time. It's very rare that he doesn't. And yet if he sees a person walking up the street on their own, he's very, very cautious of them. He's not so terrified as he was. I feel like he's made a bit of progress there, but he's still very cautious of a person walking on their own. And if there are, you know, people walking together and they don't have a dog, he's very nervous of, you know, people in numbers. But on the whole, he is improving. I feel like he's improved quite a bit, to be honest. Okay, so that's the starting colour that I want to start with there. And we'll bring in a bit of a skin tone. And I didn't actually check whether these colours in the pastel set are different to the colours that are in, and they look like they might be, which is interesting, you know, because sometimes I get caught out buying these curated extra sets and find out afterwards that they are in fact already in existing sets, which is hugely frustrating. So I'm going to take out a very pale colour here and just see what it's like. It might be good for a basis for a skin tone. It's not showing up on that plate very well. That's how pale it is. And let me just get that one that I had out of the 100 pack. Yeah, it's a different colour. So that's good. Although, I might have spoken a bit too soon. No, the colour of the caps is very different, but they're quite similar. So I'll reserve judgment just yet with how different they are. If anyone can tell me in the comments, please do. I might be way off track there, but they look similar, are they? Maybe just a one tone different. So this is like a, it's one of those very difficult colours to describe. Maybe like a oatmeal sort of colour. And so that's what I'm going to use as the base. Now we do have all that lovely grayscale which is going to influence the colour as well. But I'm going to use that as a base because I'm sort of thinking that if she's a little elfling, I was sort of thinking, you know, like colours that you would find out in the woods, not necessarily a particular type of ethnicity or skin tone, but just a generic woodsy elf-like colour. She's not human, she's not got human ears for sure, so she's not completely human, so she doesn't need to have a legitimate, believable human skin tone. And she could almost have perhaps a touch of green in her skin as well. We'll see how we go along. So I quite enjoy these sorts of fantasy type of characters and figures because it means that you don't have to strive hard for that believable human skin tone, which can be really difficult sometimes. And I like to just do things a little bit different sometimes anyway. So I'm going to use a bit of everything now and just use that to shade because I'm thinking if she's a little wood elfling, she could be, you know, a little bit of dirt, grubby skin, you know, because she's been playing with all the trees and plants and so on. that's coming along nicely. And it's going to need a little bit of darker colour in the shadowy bits of her ears. They're quite magnificent pixie looking ears that she's got here. And whilst that is looking very much all of one tone at the moment, we can bring some other colours in to add some highlights and variation. I'm going to use that to base the feather as well. And that could be very helpful over here for a snail shell. So once again, when you use these sort of colours that you've already used or mixed from similar colours that you've already used, it helps tie all these elements in together and explain the relationship of the different items that are in the composition. Okay, so rocks aren't all one colour, and also quite often rocks, when they're in these sorts of places, would have moss and other sorts of plant life and dirt. You know, and stuff on there, so they're not all going to be one simple colour, and they're also not going to be all the same shade. So I'm just going to try to bring in, this is all the colours that I've already used on the page somewhere. Just bring some of those into different areas in the rock as well. Now that really nice rich purpley pink, not quite sure, I don't know, would you call that maybe orchid or something like that? I felt like that might make nice basis to go in here for a shadow, especially on top of that bluey green. It's going to take on a bit of a purple hue or suggestion. And this is demonstrating how I was mentioning in the first part that you do not need to use black for shadows. You can use other colours, and that adequately suggests a shadow without bringing in the black. Sometimes I just feel like black, especially when it's mixed in with other colours, can really dirty those other colours and you know, like mess with the hue of them a little bit. She's got some patches on her shirt there. I'm going to treat them like I did down here a little bit. It's got a really loose interpretation of flowers, and it's a bit hard to see, you know, on the camera, but I will hold it up at the end. And also if you go to Instagram, if you're on Instagram, it will be on there, and you can also, you know, zoom in on the photo and see the areas that I'm talking about, but they're very, very loosely suggested. There's no detail on them at all. And so I'm just going to play into that idea that, you know, it might be a muted bit of faded old patterned fabric that somebody has patched her clothes with. And I'm going to bring a little bit just of that red that we used into the apple again. I kept all of the markers that I've used, I've kept out on the table here with me, so that when I'm picking any of these markers up to use, they are in fact already in the picture here somewhere. So I'm not introducing new colours, I'm only working with the colours that we already have. And I'm not actually introducing anything new into there. And I'd like to give her green eyes. Christine's done some grayscale in the eyes and she's left some highlights. So I have gone over some of that, but it is a very small area. And I'm going to use a little bit of the red and that purpley pink sort of combination to put some colour into her lips. I don't want her to look like she's got lipstick on, but I want her to look like she's got nice, healthy, rosy lips. And I'm also going to use that colour to suggest a little bit of colour into her cheeks to warm that up a bit. So and I'll also use a little bit of that on her upper lids and brow sort of area. I don't want it to look like she's wearing makeup, but I want her to look like she's alive. And I'm sorry if you can hear my belly rumbling, but I've been a bit slack with eating again today. And I'm starting to get a little bit peckish. Okay, so we'll be careful not to add too much in there. There's quite a bit of grayscale going on here with the apple, so what I'm trying to do here is match the intensity of that colour a little bit so that it all blends in a bit better. I don't really want the grayscale to show through on an apple. And I can always use a bit of marker on the page at the end if I feel like I need to reinstate some details. And I think we might just, the very slightest touch of that pinky purple, just put some onto her fingernails. I don't want them to look like she's got nail polish on, but they need a bit of colour. And I think that I'd like to do the buttons here like a pale version of that sort of, you know, pinky, burgundy, odd colour that I've mixed up there. We're just going to come back and do some of these detailed areas of the hat. I'm trying to speed up a little bit here, but don't really want to make any mistakes at this point in the colouring either, because you know we're far enough along that it would be very frustrating if I fluffed anything up majorly now. So that has like a leather lace going through it there, which I'm going to do in a brown, and I'm just going to use the marker because that makes way more sense than messing around with a really fine brush. And also I could start to use that to add some tone in there and then see how, yeah, that's diluting nicely. So that's quite a nice way just to put those little tiny touches in and then gently soften it off with the damp brush. I'm just barely touching the tip of the marker to those areas. Oh my goodness, my belly is really growling. I'm sorry if you can hear that. Okay, I'd like to warm that up a bit because it is very brown. And I'm just going to test a few colours before I commit to putting them on the page there. That's more like what I'm looking for. And I just want to warm some of these areas up a little bit. It's quite a nice way just to bring those finishing touches in. At the end, it's quick and easy just to do the marker directly onto that page now. Help blend in any areas where I've got some harsh, hard lines. And I'm barely touching the tip of that marker to the paper. It is very, very light what I'm doing there. So the wind has really picked up here. It's blowing a gale outside, but the sun is actually out at the moment. So when I've finished here, I will quickly go for another walk. I quite enjoy walking on a cool day. As long as I don't get wet. I don't like walking in the rain very much, but I do like walking on a cool, a cool wind is okay. I'm just using this brown to go over the marks that look like there was a bit of stitching on the patchwork. And I think I might do that along the pocket there on the dungarees. And I'm not going to bring in the black because I think that would be far too harsh, but I'm just going to do a very gentle touch of this brown along her lash line. Christine has drawn those lashes in there, but I'm loath to put too much colour on them because they're just going to look really unnatural. She's only young and she certainly wouldn't be wearing makeup. So I'm just going to suggest that there's a bit of darkness there. And I might actually use a little bit of that in there. Her eyelids look a little bit too light. A little bit of that in the shadow of her lid there. Sometimes too you can use the tip of your finger to gently smooth out any of that colour that you put on there. Once again, the super tip is sitting on the top of the grayscale a little bit like the other washes that I did in my last video. Which actually you may not have seen yet. That might be coming out after this one, but I tried the Sakura Koi colouring brush pens, and some of my washes where there was heavy grayscale, the washes were sitting on top of that ink and sort of skating on top of it rather than soaking in. And it took a while before the wash actually dried and looked like it had blended in. And I'm just going to use the brown for the iris, the pupil of her eye as well, rather than black. I could probably do with reinstating a little bit of white there for some highlights, but I don't actually have that pen here on the table with me at the moment. That's looking a little bit too orange there. Let's blend that back out a little bit. I'm just going to get the green and just go over some of these lines that are suggesting hem and stitching and so on, and a bit of shadow. Just to give those little bits of detail a bit of life. And there's a little bit of stitching down here. And the details on her buttons there where they're stitched in. It's a bit nice to do things like that, just to, you know, here and there it's nice to put a few of those little details back in, because people do notice that, and it's the attention to detail just here and there where it has the biggest impact, not everywhere. But here and there, it just gives your work that little bit of extra something. And people do notice that. So where I've just done that, I'm going to soften some of that. I can't remember exactly which greens I've used for all of these different areas, but it's not a huge issue if I haven't got quite the right one. You know, it's not that glaringly different that people are going to look at it and think, oh my goodness, what was she thinking? Well, hopefully not anyway. Okay. Now for background, I think that I might like to keep it in shades of brown and green. And I'm going to use a few different shades here and mix and match them. And this is one occasion where I will bring in a little bit of that black. It's a very greenish based black, so that's going to work okay, I think. So let's start with those and very carefully work from the edge of the figure outwards. And I'm going to make it quite wet and washy. There is nothing on the back of this paper to worry about, other than I'm going to make it a bit cockled and wrinkled. But there is nothing to ruin on the other side, thankfully. So I'm doing that quite wet. And I'm bringing that from the edge of the figure into the wet areas that I've just wet with the clean water. And I want to bring, you know, all the different greens into it and let them all blend together. I'm just going to come up close to the line that I've drawn. So I do want to try and erase the graphite pencil if I can. It doesn't matter if I can't achieve that, but got this rather big jumper on today, which is the sleeve is getting in the way a little bit. Now where I've got a busy area like this, I haven't pre-wet the paper, and I'm going to try and carefully go around all the edges without it bleeding. I tend to wet the paper up in those big open areas and let it bleed wherever it wants to, but where you've got fine details like this, it's a bit more risky trying that in an area that has so much to paint around and details. If that is meant to be black, it really does not look like black. It looks like a very dark green. Might have to do a few more little experiments with that. Sorry, I'm not saying very much here, but I'm just concentrating on getting around these finer details. And something that I try to do when I've got a similar colour to the item that I'm painting around, so I've got leaves here, I try to choose, if it's a random sort of abstract background like this, I try to use a darker green to go around the lighter leaves, and if there's a darker area, I'll pick the lighter green to go in the background around the darker area. I hope that makes some sense. And these are actually, look like they might be separating the colours a little bit too, where I've mixed some colours together. They actually do look like they're separating a little bit on the page as well, like the koi colouring brush pens do. So, you know, all in all, I think for a budget supply like these Supertips are, you actually can get some very nice results going. Now, because I've got that sort of dark area down in this corner, I'm going to mirror that a little bit over here. Plus I've got the light green grass going on, so I want to make sure that the light green stands out a little bit. So I'll just pull that sleeve up. I've gone over the line on that side. So here with the darker brown, I'm introducing the lighter green for the background.